All right, you guys, we're here with Coach's Conversation, Cafe. Coach Tom Buckley and I are hanging out here and just going to have a short conversation about, our roles as a coach and how that kind of happens. I think it's a useful topic because a lot of times, there's some things that go on as a coach that we end up seeing and are having, you know, and having it kind of impose on us to just become different roles. Kids come in with different scenarios and they need an extra family member or something that ends up happening that as humans, where our bodies kind of either naturally go to or based on time and proximity with our student athletes, it really changes how we'll respond to them and what will go on or what they require of us. And so we wanted to take a look more at, taking on more roles as a coach and what that would look like for us. So today we haven't said that, hey, we agree on one way or the other, but I just kind of want to get a little bit of feedback and opinion on what it feels like to or what's the idea behind taking on extra roles as a coach. So I know for me, and I'll kind of give my opinion first. I know for me, as far as taking on different roles as a coach, I like to stay coach. I feel like, being a coach and being able to have that perspective as much as possible. And if anything, maybe expand my umbrella a little bit, but always be coach. Like not, I don't even require my athletes to call me by my name without a coach in front of it. So I think just being able to focus on the idea of, hey, you know what? I have this role that I'm playing and it's only coach. I feel like when we start moving into other areas, it starts changing things over a little bit and there's confusion and I think it starts expanding our job out. So, that's my initial thinking about taking on, our other roles besides coach. Hey, Adam, good afternoon.
Hey, good afternoon.
Join us. We're just
Good
right now,
afternoon.
we're just sharing some of our thoughts about taking on, our opinions about taking on roles as coaches, extra roles, that might come to us as coaches. All right, Coach Buckley. So what do you think about that? What's your opinion on that?
Well, I agree with you. I think where we get into trouble sometimes is, and there's a fine line between that line that you don't want to step over. You have to be careful about. I think is not wanting to be their friend, but yet you want to be them to be able to share things with you because as a coach, whether we like it or not, we receive more roles as a coach just because of our society and family structure has changed a lot. So a lot of times, we're a lot to a kid, but I think, you're right. We have to be careful. And I like that idea that, hey, first I'm the coach. And I think in my experience, the best scenario has been when I have sit down with the team and say, hey, look, I'm your coach first. And I want to know when you have issues, I want to know, and I want you to come to me and share issues. But remember, I'm your coach first. And I'm not here to be your best friend. I'm here to be your coach. And I want you to understand that, that's important. But number one, I'm your coach. I want you to show respect for me, and I'm going to show respect for you as well. But we're not going to cross that line and be buddy-buddy because I think that's where we sometimes get into trouble.
Right. Adam, do you have anything for that too?
Yeah, I would just say that Coach is exactly right. I mean, it's important early on to define roles and responsibilities. Roles as the head coach, roles as assistant coaches, making sure that everybody understands their responsibilities. I often think that, when we're around our players, we definitely want to keep them involved and keep them engaged, but at the same time, we have to, really draw that line. And it has to be defined. Players need to know. They need to know boundaries, right? We all want boundaries. And just like Coach said, it's really important early on at the very beginning. And part of that is checking in with the players every day, but really setting that foundation early, but be very clear on expectations from you as the head coach.
Okay, Keith. Oh, you're on mute.
We're discussing the roles of assistant coaches, Isaac. Is that correct?
No, we were talking about some of the roles that go on that accidentally get handed to us. You know, like sometimes a player needs us to be a friend. Sometimes a player needs us to be a dad. Like sometimes, you know, we end up turning ourselves into something else. You know, but at the end of the day, like, you know, we're just kind of getting some opinions about. You know, what we think about accepting other roles. You know, we haven't given a right or wrong idea. We're just kind of tossing it around a little bit.
You know, I think it's important to be flexible as a coach. Certainly, you know, not everything can be scripted. Things are going to come down the chute, and you're going to have to adapt as a coach and be flexible and take on some of those duties. But it's very important to understand that wherever you're coaching, either at a collegiate level, a high school level, a youth level, there are guidelines to follow. And you always want to make sure that what you're saying, what you're doing, your actions, your words are in line with those policies, procedures, protocol, statutes, whatever they might be in the area, in the realm that you're coaching, at the level you're coaching, so that you don't step out of bounds yourself. And by doing that, I think you're always going to be safe. We're not inventing the wheel here. There are already written things from the youth level all the way to the collegiate and pros level that we know we have to follow and maintain. And if you familiarize yourself with that, and then in turn be flexible and know that, hey, you know, I'm willing to do what it takes, and I think everybody's safe and gets the most out of it.
Yeah, if I may add also to that, Isaac, I think as Coach Buckley pointed out, but just in general, what Keith is saying, when we set out those expectations and you know, the standards of coaching, we want to make sure that our parents are well aware of how we're going to be communicating with their son or their daughter, right? Got to think about that. That's important because you know, today we know that just about every kid, every young person has a cell phone. So there's a lot of communication going on. And so when we talk about communication, we talk about our relationships, we want to make sure that we're very clear on what is it that we're going to be communicating with their son or daughter with. And so parents need to be aware, back to that whole role, the role of a coach. If you're going to be communicating with your athletes, you need to make sure that parents are well aware of what kind of communication is going on.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, and you know, there's some characteristics to me, and I think, you know, people, what father means to one person can mean something different to another person. So if we could just get into some characteristics about what would probably not be helpful, or what have you seen not be helpful as a coach. And so I think about characteristics that probably aren't things that I want to do in any role as a coach would be something like what I call codependence, right? So a player comes to you with some kind of emotion and you somehow want to fix it, right? And usually the emotion isn't necessarily on the playing field where we get sucked in. That might be something that we're a little bit better at, but it might be something in life, right? And we start taking on this role of doing more extra in that scenario. And depending on that situation, if we're not mindful about what's going on, we could really end up in a place or with time in a scenario that we don't want to be. The hard thing about that is the flip side is true too. If we do know what's going on and we're paying attention to detail and we can know some things about the situation, we can also be helpful, right? So what are some characteristics that you guys can kind of think about, if any, that probably wouldn't be helpful in making our role better as a coach?
Well, one thing I'll just say is that I know, especially if you're coaching girls, you got to be real careful. And I think, you know, sometimes playing the role of a father or a counselor, that gets difficult when they come to you with, you know, they're going through relationship problems or whatever. I think you have to be very careful. And I think if you're a male coach, especially, it's important that you have a female assistant or somebody there with you when you're talking about those conversations, because it very easily can turn into something that, you know, you may get accused of or whatever. So it's always good to have that backup by you. But I think, you know, the hard part about coaching is there are great opportunities, you know, that come along when you know a situation and a kid's struggling, and you may have some good information where you can help them. But, you know, there's a fine line again, and you have to be real careful. But I do think that's one of the reasons I got into coaching, because it's more than just teaching the game. There's so much of positive influence you can have on a kid that comes from an area where they're struggling, and maybe they don't have the parent dynamic at home, and you can fill in some of those gaps as long as you're, you know, being careful to not go too far.
Yeah, I would agree with that, Coach. I think on our end of it, you know, it's really important to really know the boundaries, right? But, you know, that's why you have assistant coaches. So
Yes.
You have to be very clear at the very beginning. If you do have an assistant coach or you don't, you have a trainer that could be available to support you and be part of that conversation. It's very difficult at times. And I know that what I've always done and you know, my time in coaching is always made sure that I had an assistant or had another adult with me present to make sure that we covered all of our bases. And that became part of the standard for any type, even, you know, many of the assistant coaches that I've had, if they had a situation with a parent, I made sure that I was there with them so we could have that conversation. But as a head coach, your job is to make sure that you're covering all of that in terms of working with our parents or just working with players. You want to make sure that there's a clear understanding that there's always going to be another adult present. That's just your expectation as the head coach.
Pete, do you have anything on that?
Yeah, those are all great words of wisdom there. Along a different line, I think more in kind of what you were alluding to, Isaac, is you know, we don't want to be something other than their coach or mentor first. I think that we have to make sure that while we're wearing all these multiple hats, that we don't get lost in being what we're there for primarily, which is their coach. And so we can wear many hats, but we have to make sure that we're not doing something else that's taking us away from being their coach or mentor first. And another thing that I've seen a lot is going a different direction is coaches being too standoffish from players. Coaches that you often wonder, you know, do you not like working with young people? Because if you don't, then maybe you're in the wrong, you know, field. Maybe you're volunteering your time in the wrong spot. And I've seen that where coaches are too standoffish. The other thing we need to touch on is, you know, I come from 25 years in a business where a catchphrase we use a lot is need to know. Okay, and there are things that I've seen assistant coaches or even head coaches share with their players that they just flat out don't need to know. Okay, those are things left in the coach's room, in the film room, in the board room, and you know, there's certain topics that need to stay within the coaches, the adult mind framework, and the players just don't need to know. And you know, also, you know, I've seen some coaches fall into this trap of consistent negativity, you know, where their initial desire to be motivational kind of takes a turn to the dark side, if you will, and becomes this persistent negative type of approach. And we got to walk that fine line between motivation and being this kind of wet towel coach. It's always negative. You know, so those are some of the just the little pitfalls and traps that I've seen. I've struggled with myself as a coach.
Okay. Yeah, perfect. Yeah, good ideas for being able to look at some things, maybe to look at or watch out for. You know, as coaches, I love all three of those ideas. All right. So, I mean, I think, and this is what happens if we look at the timeline, at least the way practices used to be set up, is we were spending at least 2 hours in practice. That means that they were probably there like a half an hour before, working on getting to practice half an hour before and a half an hour after. So you're thinking about 3 hours out of their day after they've gone to school for about 5 or 6 hours. So that's 8 hours out of their day that's a little bit spread out, where most likely they're spending more time away from their parents in any given day throughout the week than they are actually spending time with us. And so we end up seeing and spending that much more time. That doesn't include the travel days where we're going to games and we're sitting in stands waiting for the other levels to play, or just having, different kind of communication pieces. So that kind of thing, goes on. And in fairness to us as coaches, there's a lot of opportunity to be able to bond and to know people and to grow people. And so that's kind of the flip over. So let's talk about that for a second. How do we utilize our ability to have different roles as a coach that's a healthy way of doing it, right? Like, what do you think is a healthy way of being able to put it out? And some of it we are touching on just by saying the things that we want to kind of stay away from, but what are some healthy ways? So I'll go first just to not put anybody on the spot. Like, I think one of the things that you have to do is be able to trust yourself as a person, trust the work that you're doing to be in a better situation, right? That's one thing. The other part that I really like is truth. Like, one of the things that happens in therapy, which I think, easily came from or even could be carried over into coaching, is, man, I always tell everything, right? There really isn't, this isn't about keeping secrets. This is about growing you. And so that keeps a healthy kind of interaction going on, because we know that this isn't something that we're going to try to hold in together, or we're going to keep away from the team. There's not going to be any allies going on. Everything is about growth if you're around me, right? And so we set that standard up about truth. Yes, you can start by giving it here in confidence, but I want you to have the confidence too that you can go out and we can talk about whatever it means to grow from whatever you're going through. So how are we going to do that? What are some benefits to having these accidental roles that we end up in as coaches? What are we going to do? How are we going to be able to do that?
Well, I'll take a stab at it. I can just tell you where I've garnered some of that is with experience. I think experience gives us, Isaac, and coaches help in deciding how we're going to go about doing those things. And also, as I mentioned earlier, what I fell back on is, if I was in a quandary and I really didn't know how to move on a particular topic or with a particular athlete, which way to go, again, I reference guidelines. And I thought to myself, first, let's make sure everything we're doing is proper and squared away. And by using guidelines plus experience and even going and attending coaching clinics, okay, I think that gives you that background. And that allows you to address those issues like that. And rather than speak on specifically what I will do, I think it's important to know how do you get that and experience. The referencing the guys, make sure you're doing everything, the right way. And then attending coaching clinics and speaking to other coaches and attach yourself to successful coaches, okay? And when I say successful, I don't mean just wins or losses. I mean successfuls across the board. Wins and losses, obviously, important. But sometimes guys just win because they're in a certain area. They're the only team, and they got the best talent than their opponents do. Okay, so who knows? So they got to be people of high quality as well. So associate yourself with those people. Pick their brain. Learn. Have intellectual curiosity, as we've touched on before.
Yeah, I totally agree with that, Keith. That's a good point, because I think we learn from other people. I know when I was an athletic director, it really allowed me to go see a lot of different programs instead of being stuck in my own tunnel, and seeing how they related with different coaches, related with their kids, or connected, or how they connected with parents, helped me as I went back into coaching with some good ideas. And I think that's how we learn. Find the people that seem to do it the right way, and learn from them. I know one of the things that I learned from some other coaches, that is, parents want to be able to trust you with their kids. And so I think the more that you can connect with the parents, which a lot of coaches don't want to do, but I think when you do things to connect, whether it be meetings with them or a simple thing like, a lot of people use the Remind app to text students and that, and putting the parents on the same thing so that they get it. Because I know so many have thanked me for that, because you tell the player information, go home and share with their parents. They never do. And so they know exactly when they're getting out of practice. They know, what's coming up, what events are coming up, and they appreciate that. So I think that if you can set the stage ahead of time with parents, and letting them know that you're in this for them, and also contacting parents before a problem even happens. I've been better at that lately, as far as if something happens at practice, calling them, say, hey, I just want to let you know today that Jerry was having a rough time at practice. So I don't know if there was anything going on, but I just wanted to let you know. And sometimes just that phone call, they say, thank you, coach. And then they get back and say, here's what was going on. Or maybe there was something that went on at home. So just connecting with parents, and I think helps with the players as well.
Yeah, I would agree, Coach and Keith. Good points. I think at the end of the day, it's going to be really important that line of communication with your parents. One of the most important parts of what we do as coaches is always understanding protocol. Right. I spent a lot of time with our athletic director when I was coaching, and we would have our regular biweekly meetings. And that was important, because our athletic director had expectations, standards of practice, expectations, me as a head coach, and really being able to understand what those guidelines were. I have to make sure I follow my protocol. And oftentimes we as coaches think, we got to find the answers maybe from another coach, but you know what? We have an athletic director, and our athletic director, and I can guarantee you, someone like Coach Buckley, who was, spent many years as an athletic director, would, if he doesn't have the answer, he's going to find a solution for us. And creating that dialogue with your protocol, with your athletic director, is so important, and oftentimes neglected. Sometimes you get in a head coaching role and you think, well, I got this. Well, no, sometimes it's important to communicate with your athletic director, because your athletic director can give you the guidance that you need for the success of your program. And one thing that I found we had a lot of success early on was our communication. We were always on the same page. And if it never felt awkward if he approached me, because we had that relationship, and building that relationship with your athletic director is extremely important in moving forward in all that we do, whether we're working with parents, because some athletic directors might even ask you as a head coach not to communicate with parents. Yeah, he may be the one that wants to communicate with the parents, and in this case, an athletic director that I worked for, that's what he said. Parents shouldn't be talking to you; they should be talking to me. And I appreciated that, but I also shared with him that I need to take some of that off of him as well. He's got a lot of other responsibilities, but again, always checking in with your athletic director is extremely important. So that would be my suggestion on all of this.
Yeah, Adam, and just to add on to that, as a ex-athletic director, you don't want to be clotheslined by all of a sudden this parent gives you a call, a situation you didn't know about. So it's always good for that coach to if there's an issue or something that's brewing, to let that athletic director know, so they can expect a call from a parent or whatever, and that way they're prepared. So I think very important to communicate with the athletic director.
Yep.
Man, you guys are getting the beef today. For everybody who's watching and listening, I mean, you're getting different roles, for us, we all have been different roles and in different scenarios even now. And just to be able to hear feedback on, how do I do my role as a coach? you know, like what happens in these scenarios. Who knows what you're going to decide to do, but at least you have some information to help make an informed decision for your personality, your best practice, and most importantly, the athlete you're trying to serve. So you're getting all that today, and so it excites me just to hear my guys up here talking about these different things from these angles. Yeah, so I just kind of want to close on the idea that, you know, yeah, I like the family piece as much as possible. I think that was something that I hear often. You know, I see a lot of teams trying to form that bond. And to be honest, I don't think leaving the athlete's family out of the scenario is part of that. Now, how you do that or how much they're in there, you know, you might have to change that for your liking. But I do think at some rate or another, their family needs to be involved, and it makes your family that much stronger. So that's part of your role, though, is being able to figure out how that all works together. All right. Any final thoughts on roles or anything that I didn't touch on that you guys know, man, I wanted to share this about roles within coaching?
No, I think just on my end of it, Isaac, I think, again, be very clear on expectations, you know, defining roles and responsibilities and why it's important to include parents. Sometimes it's a challenge, you know, because it's a double-edged sword. You know, you got to think about, you know, do I give them too much information? You know, are they going to be calling me every day? Are they, you know, again, if you lay that out and say at the very beginning of our, you know, our season, we'll have a parent meeting. We're also going to have a follow-up meeting halfway through the season. And then at the end of the year, we're going to have, or end of the season, we're going to have our banquet. You will see how parents will respond. I mean, you know, I was responsible for having, you know, obviously as a head coach, you got to set your banquets up and all that good stuff. I mean, we were at standing room only. All the parents showed up. All the players showed up, of course. And you know, you had, you know, friends and family, everybody wanted to be there because we included them early. And that also builds your culture. You know, you as the head coach, that's your responsibility. You know, you define that culture. And I think for me, it's really about early on, be very clear. Expectations are really important, but you want to really set a good foundation by including your families.
All right, you guys, man, you got to spend 30 minutes, got a lot of good nuggets today. Appreciate you guys all standing in. Keith, Adam, Tom, thank you for joining us. And we will see you guys next week. Oh, it's Thanksgiving coming up here. Everyone's safe and enjoying their families, figures out how to do it this time around. You guys enjoy your day, and we'll talk to you guys soon.
All right. Thank you. You guys